Heart is offering you what we are calling a few-minute warming. These inspirational words may be just what you need to change the outcome of your life. Join us for a warming to fill your heart.
Where is Christ for you? I read this delightful book I'd like to share with you because it's a modern parable to me where this young man found Christ in his life. It's become a bestseller, I understand. It's entitled Tuesdays with Morrie. To give a brief background, and then I'd like to just share a few highlights of his reflections. This young man, Mitch Albom, went to college and took this class that he really liked this one professor of sociology, and his name was Morrie. And he was quite taken by him, and so he took as many classes from him as possible. One reason was their easy grades. You've been there, right? There was something delightful about who he was, and so he found himself, I think, majoring or at least minoring in sociology, largely because of the professor. In any case, he then graduated and lost touch with Morrie, but came back in touch with him when he had learned that his old college professor contracted the well-known Lou Gehrig's disease, which you know is a neurological disorder. He explains it as it's something like a candle. It attacks your muscles and nervous system and leaves your body like a candle, almost like a pile of wax. It begins with the legs and works itself up in a terrible, debilitating way. So this young man, Mitch, went to see his old college professor, Morrie, and was so taken by his attitude of the way he dealt with his disease. Instead of lessening his life, it seemed to improve his quality of life. And so they began to visit each other on Tuesdays, thus the title, of course. And he mentions in each Tuesday they spend just in conversation, deep reflection about some of the simplest but most profound things of life, such as family and marriage and relationships and suffering and sickness and, of course, death itself, and what those things that ultimately really matter. And to read a couple quotes to you that you might enjoy. Morrie told and shared with Mitch, "So many people walk around with a meaningless life. They seem half asleep, even when they're busy doing so many things that they think are important. That is because they're chasing all the wrong things. The way you get into deeper meaning into your life is to devote yourself to loving others, devoting yourself to your family and community around you, and devoting yourself to creating something that gives you purpose and meaning." And this really struck Mitch because he was caught in the trap of just living a really busy life. He was a sports writer and going here and there and failing to pay attention to these kind of things that Morrie was revealing to him. And over a conversations of these Tuesdays, he began to notice a little change that he was being called to. Morrie appeared on Ted Kappel, and this is where I think Mitch first learned about him. And Ted Kappel asked him the embarrassing question, "What is the hardest thing about your debilitating disease?" And then he asked Ted Kappel, "Can I say this on national television?" And he said, "Go for it." And he says, "Well, the hardest thing is facing the fear that someone would have to wipe my behind someday." He says, "It takes away from all my sense of dignity and responsibility." And he says, "I just fret and fear that day, knowing it would come." And finally, when it came, he said, he was able to accept it, because he allowed himself to feel the fears. And part of what Morrie was able to teach Mitch is to go ahead and feel the feelings. I think that's part of the deeper life we're called to go ahead and feel the fear and then we could deal with it. Does that make sense? So often we're afraid of that, and so we live so much of life on the surface, because fear is one of the things that keeps us from plunging deeper into harder realities of life. Learning the healthier but yet harder way is to get deeply in touch with those feelings within ourselves and ask the question, where is God in all of this? Where is the Spirit? Because the Spirit is in all of that. And somehow that's what Morrie was about. Although I'm giving it a little more of a religious language maybe, but certainly his example did just that. He said, and this really touched Mitch when he said it, the most important in life is to learn how to give out love and how to let love come in. And it caught him up short because Mitch was a person who had a hard time being loved, receiving love. And although he believed every bit of this, he was neglecting the people who loved him the most and who he was called to love, his own family, because he was so busy. Slowly, this friendship, this deep friendship, called him to make some real profound changes in his life. And in my mind, it was like a religious conversion. He said it in his final chapter, in the final paragraph. I read to you. He says, have you ever really had a teacher in life, one who saw you as a raw yet precious person, a jewel that with wisdom could be polished to a proud shine? If you are so lucky enough to have found someone, such a teacher, you will find your way back to them. He then ends by saying, the last class of my old professor's life took place once a week in the classroom of his home by a window in a study where he would watch a small hibiscus plant shed its pink flowers. The class met every Tuesday. No books were required, and the subject was on the meaning of life, and it was taught from experience. And the teaching goes on. Just a really delightful book, but it made me ask the question, where is Christ for me? Where is Christ for you?
We thank you for accessing the Heart to Heart app. Please return again to hear inspiration that may make you laugh or even cry, but most importantly, bring you closer to your Savior, Jesus Christ.